Imagine a war that conquered a holy city without the clang of swords or a single drop of blood spilled. A crusade that was won not on the battlefield, but at the negotiating table. A Christian king who was excommunicated by the Pope, yet still succeeded where armies had failed. This is not a fable. This is not fiction. This is the true story of the Sixth Crusade, the crusade that changed everything. The year is 1228. Europe is still reeling from the disastrous failures of earlier crusades. The memory of the Fourth Crusade, the one that ended with Christians sacking their fellow Christians in Constantinople, still haunts the continent. The Fifth Crusade had just recently collapsed in Egypt, failing to capture Cairo and suffering heavy losses. The papacy is desperate. Jerusalem remains under Muslim control, and the crusading dream, that divine ambition to reclaim the holy city, is starting to fade. Enter Frederick II, the Holy Roman Emperor, a man who defied nearly every expectation of a medieval Christian monarch. Born in Sicily, raised among Muslims and Jews, fluent in Arabic, Greek, Latin, and Italian, he was called the Stupor Mundi, the wonder of the world, for his unmatched intellect. But he was also mistrusted, even despised, by the Church. Frederick had promised multiple times to go on crusade, and each time he had delayed. Whether due to illness, political chaos, or diplomatic maneuvers, the Pope saw only excuses. By 1227, Pope Gregory IX had had enough. When Frederick again delayed his departure to the Holy Land, the Pope excommunicated him, an unprecedented act. A crusade led by an excommunicated emperor was unthinkable. But Frederick didn't flinch. Instead, he went. Under the shadow of excommunication, with no papal blessing, Frederick sailed east. Not with a massive army, but with a small force and a radical idea, to win Jerusalem without fighting. What unfolded next would baffle both friend and foe. Upon arriving in the Levant, Frederick found a region still recovering from past crusades. Muslim powers were fragmented. The powerful Ayyubid dynasty, descendants of the legendary Saladin, were divided between brothers. In Egypt sat al-Kamil, the Sultan who had defended his realm against the Fifth Crusade. In Damascus ruled his brother, al-Muazzam. And between them, a delicate balance of power teetered on the edge. Frederick saw an opportunity. Instead of rallying knights for siege, he opened secret channels of diplomacy. Letters passed. Gifts were exchanged. Envoys whispered behind closed doors. And slowly a deal emerged, one that would stun both the Islamic and Christian worlds. On February 18, 1229, an agreement was signed. The Treaty of Jaffa. In it, al-Kamil agreed to hand over Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Nazareth, and a corridor to the sea peacefully. In return, Muslims would retain control of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock. No bloodshed, no war. Jerusalem would be Christian once again, on paper. For the first time in crusading history, the Holy City was reclaimed without a single sword raised. Frederick II, the excommunicated emperor, had done what no crusader army could. He entered Jerusalem not as a conqueror but as a negotiator. And just days later, he crowned himself king of Jerusalem, not in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which remained closed by the clergy, but in the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem under his own authority. But not all celebrated. In Europe, the Pope raged. Gregory IX denounced the treaty, calling it blasphemous and shameful. The Church refused to recognize Frederick's achievements. Back in the Holy Land, Christian barons were divided. Some saw Frederick as a savior, others as a heretic. The clergy, still loyal to Rome, rejected his coronation. Even Muslim leaders criticized al-Kamil for surrendering Jerusalem without a fight. The peace was fragile. Within a decade, Muslim forces would retake Jerusalem. The dream of a permanent Christian kingdom in the Holy Land would slip away once more. But for a brief moment, diplomacy had succeeded where war had failed. Yet the real question is deeper. Why would a Muslim sultan hand over the most contested city in the world? Why would he trust an emperor condemned by his own church? And what did Frederick truly want? To answer that, we must understand the minds of these two men. Al-Kamil was not just a warrior, he was a pragmatic ruler. His brother in Damascus posed a greater threat than the distant Christians. By giving up Jerusalem, a city already devastated by past battles, he secured his western flank and bought himself time. The holy places of Islam, Mecca and Medina, were far more central to his religious and political survival. Frederick, on the other hand, was a man of contradictions. Devout yet defiant, educated in Islamic courts yet crowned a Christian king. Some scholars believe he saw himself as a bridge between civilizations. Others say it was pure ego, a bid to outshine his rivals and humiliate the Pope. Perhaps it was both. But what cannot be denied is this: the Sixth Crusade shattered the mold. It proved that diplomacy could wield more power than the sword, that holy war could be fought with ink instead of blood, that a heretic in the eyes of Rome could wear the crown of Jerusalem. And in doing so, it exposed the uncomfortable truth at the heart of the crusading ideal, that religion, politics, power, and pride were always more tangled than the Church cared to admit. Frederick's legacy remains controversial. Some hail him as a visionary ahead of his time. Others condemn him as a traitor to the true crusading cause. But no one can deny his impact. The Sixth Crusade was the only one to reclaim Jerusalem without warfare. And it forced both Christians and Muslims to confront a new reality: that negotiation could achieve what generations of bloodshed could not. In the end, Frederick returned to Europe, not as a hero but as a man still excommunicated. The Pope launched a propaganda war trying to discredit him. Frederick responded with letters, manifestos, and military might. He would eventually reclaim his position in Europe, but his relationship with the Church remained tense, even hostile, until his death. As for Jerusalem, its fate would continue to shift for centuries. But for a brief, extraordinary moment, two rulers, divided by faith, united by reason, chose dialogue over death. In the grand saga of the Crusades, filled with fire and fury, the Sixth Crusade stands alone. A war without a war, a victory without violence, a crown without a blessing. And perhaps, in that silence between battles, lies the most powerful story of all. Because history doesn't always echo with swords and screams. Sometimes it whispers, through letters, through treaties, through men who dared to rewrite the rules of holy war. And if we listen closely, we might still hear that whisper today.